My name is Brian Stillman, and I am the musician behind Negative Agent. Negative Agent is a anti-fascist industrial metal band out of New York City. Lots of loud guitars, aggressive synthesizers, and heavy beats. Sometimes more metal, but sometimes drifting closer to dance floor stuff that I grew up on in the 90s. I came up in the goth industrial scene in the mid-90s, early 2000s, and this is the stuff that I kind of grew up on. Bands like Ministry and KMFDM, Frontline Assembly, Skinny Puppy, and they kind of stuck with me over all this time. And it's the stuff I was trying to do when I had bands back then, but this is kind of all finally clicking 30 years later. The message behind it all is very strong anti-fascist message, very political lyrics are something that's important to me, and I think in my country, in America, it's a pretty big deal right now as we are overrun by these wannabe authoritarian assholes, and this music is very much a reaction to that, and it is my way of confronting all the anger I'm feeling and all the fear and all that sense of not being able to do anything. All that comes together as Negative Agent. And you can dance to it, which is, what the fuck? We're all gonna die, so you might as well dance, right? Right. The politics of Negative Agent are very front and center on the debut album, Terminal Days. I started writing music for this project the night before a certain orange motherfucker was inaugurated for the second time against all moral reality. Somehow he made it in a second time, and I was so dumbfounded by it all and so angry by it all, and I felt like there was nothing I could do or say. And because what power do we have compared to this giant sort of political machine that's out there? And so I just started writing music. It wasn't an attempt to like change the world or anything like that. It was just me needing a way to get this shit out, and the first song, Annihilation Kick, is what came out. And I didn't put a lot of thought into it at first. I just came up with a riff, I came up with a beat. And the more I worked on it, the sort of angrier it got. And the lyrics were I actually think they're pretty funny now. As serious as politics are, it's hard not to be a sarcastic dick when you're talking about these people. So the lyrics just kind of came really fast, without needing a lot of rewriting, which for me is pretty rare. Like, I need to rewrite my lyrics a lot. But it just was kind of everything that I was feeling all coming out in one big sort of explosion. And the rest of the album, that kind of set the tone for the rest of the album, For the most part, something going on in the world was whatever that might be at the time was what motivated the song. So, Bootlicker, I wrote when CBS capitulated to the FCC and the government and fired Stephen Colbert, which to me was astonishing. A song like Mind Wipe has to do with the rise of AI and the sort of overwhelming wave of that, and how that's just washing across creativity and the human expression and our ability to think, you know what I mean? Like our ability to engage in critical thought and critical assessment. And it was just wiping that out, or feels like it's wiping that out, you know what I mean? If we don't push back. And so that's where Mind Wipe came from. A song like Ignition Warning. Ignition Warning was me watching all these immigrants in our country just get rounded up by, this fascist arms muscle, you know what I mean? By this little militarized group of people, many of whom were pardoned after, the insurrection January 6th. They're pardoned by the government, and now they're given weaponry and body armor and the sort of stamp of approval by the people in power to just go and grab people off the street, and it's terrifying, it's horrifying. And I was just thinking about that as I wrote Ignition Warning. So all these things are at the core of what so much of the spirit behind Negative Agent. That said, it's not all that's there. It's a big part of what informs this project. It's probably the biggest part of what informs this project. But I've decided to leave room for myself to, also write songs that are just things that interest me. You know what I mean? The sort of best example of that is the song Dead in Berlin, which closes out the album. And that's basically a song about 80s Cold War spies. You know what I mean? Like I guess you can read some politics into that, but it's really just me having fun with a genre, the spy thriller that I like. That's all it really is, and putting like a cyberpunk spin on it. So the thing about Negative Agent is, I think there is this idea that while I'm dead serious about the politics, the delivery of those politics and the expression of those politics can be broadly expressed. It can be humorous. It can be snarky. It can be outright angry. Fascist Beatdown. That's the best, most obvious, on the nose, politically oriented song on this album. It's called Fascist Beatdown. It does not leave a lot of room for interpretation. But I think the lyrics are fucking funny as hell. You know what I mean? Even though the sentiment behind it is super serious, the lyrics themselves, it's basically me finding lots of ways to make fun of these assholes. So Negative Agent is this thing that I'm trying to be focused, but also leave a lot of room for me as a musician to just have fun as well. I think it's important as we deal with this world we find ourselves in to find these places where we can blow off steam or have fun or just kind of find a way to take care of ourselves. And that's part of what Negative Agent is for as well. That's I think the goal, right? To find a way to connect with people and help them just help each other get through all this. So Negative Agent is musically kind of a bit of a throwback to the stuff I came up on when I was coming up in the scene. I got into the industrial scene in New York City probably around 1992. And, just going to clubs and listening to music and seeing bands. And eventually by like 93 or 94, I started having my own bands. And we were playing clubs in New York City. And we were doing this, it was kind of industrial metal, but it was music that was really influenced by stuff happening in the scene at the time. So bands like Ministry, Psalm 69. If you listen to Terminal Days, it's pretty obvious that I'm a huge Ministry fan. Frontline Assembly, their albums, Tactical Neural Implant, Millennium in particular, and really all their early stuff is a big influence on me. These heavy, heavy beats and these kind of layers of synthesizers and percolating sounds that kind of come in and go away. Bands like KMFDM, big beat type stuff that were incorporating guitars really early on. But also a lot of metal, and a lot of punk rock. Those are all things that you can't always hear it in the music, I think, but it's stuff that I'm sometimes thinking about as I'm writing and being like, oh yeah, there's that really cool riff in, whatever. And it gets me thinking about stuff and it gets me writing in a certain way, and then something comes out of that. I'm not good enough to rip anybody else off directly, which is maybe a good thing, because I'll try to I'll be influenced by something, but what comes out is going to inevitably be my thing, because I couldn't copy them if I wanted to. But all those kind of things play a part in what's influencing me on a musical level. Skinny Puppy is a huge one, but probably not something you hear very much of in Negative Agent itself. But the way Kevin Key and Dwayne and Ogre, the way they all layered sounds and manipulated samples and played with noise and distortion and sort of atonalities is something that I'm really into. I'm a really big fan of Skinny Puppy. And even though that's not something you hear too much in my music, it's always there when I'm thinking about how I want to approach synthesizer patches or sample manipulation or processing on beats in like sort of transitional moments and things like that. So that's a big part of it. EBM bands like Front 242, big influence. And they keep me thinking about rhythm. They keep me thinking about what makes something kind of rhythmically rich. And again, I might not go there in the music itself, but it's what I'm thinking about as I go in the directions that I do go. So in a lot of ways, Negative Agent, and particularly Terminal Days, is an homage to 90s industrial music and the 90s club scene, and all these things that were so much a part of me, and my musical upbringing. You know, Wax Trax Records out of Chicago their catalog was my Bible, along with, you know, like I said, all sorts of punk rock, and all sorts of metal, which is probably the least stuff you hear the influence of. So it all kind of comes together and mixes and matches and gets all churned up along with whatever else I'm listening to. One other thing that's a huge influence on me musically is synth pop and new wave. I'm a massive fan of Duran Duran, Pet Shop Boys, New Order, a lot of post-punk bands like Joy Division, and obviously goth bands like The Cure and you know, Smiths and all these other bands. And they all play an influence in the sense that a lot of my songs have pretty melodic choruses, or at least melodic elements running through them. And I think that's probably coming out of my synth pop interests. I've tried to write synth pop songs and it never works out because I can't not make things heavy and aggressive. So I'll never get to indulge my dream of having a synth pop band unless I team up with someone who's much better at it than I am. Also, I can't sing all that great. I can sing for what Negative Agent is, but synth pop vocals are probably way out of my range. But yeah, those are my musical interests. They're pretty broad, and those are the things that I think have the most impact on what I'm doing with this band. As I obviously sort of talked about this already, but like I said, there were so many bands in the 60s, 70s, and perhaps most salient to me in the 80s, that were not afraid to make politics part of their music. And I sometimes feel like we get away from that a little bit, which is fine. If that's not where you want to go musically, that's not where you want to go musically. I think musicians and all artists have to do the things that are true to them, that are honest to them. So that's cool. But I just feel like music, and all art, but music in particular, is such a great way of taking a stand, of giving voice to your feelings about what's going on in the world around us. And right now, there's a lot of shit going on in the world around us. You know, I'm based out of the US, and right now we are in a fascist shit show. And how can I not talk about that? How can that not be center in my mind, you know, as I'm writing music? It's just, you can't avoid it. So, you know, who knows? Maybe in a couple years we will find ourselves miraculously in some sort of utopia, and I'm not sure what I'm gonna get to write about. Maybe I'll find myself at a loss for words because I don't have this thing I can kind of rail against. But I'd like to think there are other things that I want to get out and want to express, and Negative Agent will still be a viable outlet for it. But right now, I mean, this is the world we live in, and you kind of just have to, I have to just confront that head on in terms of my music. You know, and it goes hand in hand with the rest of our lives. Like, these things aren't separated and segmented, you know? You go on marches, you do letter writing campaigns, you do all these things that as citizens we can do. You go out and vote, you fucking vote, right? So this is just one aspect of it. you know, it all kind of bleeds together. So it's funny, Al Jurgensen from Ministry once said that he always feels really inspired when there's a Bush in the White House because he's just so pissed off. So you get, you know, the Psalm 69 album, you get Houses of the Mole album, which are both like incredibly aggressive, angry records with a pointed focus on the first George Bush and then his idiot son, the second George Bush. And I don't know, maybe that's what Negative Agent will be like, but I guess we'll see. But it's where I am right now. You know, I want to just say, I probably to answer an earlier question a little more, there are a lot of things that are fueling Negative Agent. You know, I mentioned all these politics, but it's more than just that. It's also the rise of AI, this sort of technological shit show that the tech bros keep throwing at us, whether we like it or not. You know, that has environmental issues, that is costing people jobs, that is, it gets in the way of critical thinking. It allows you to create deep fakes of people and in ways that just sort of violates their it violates them as people. And it is a tool for misinformation, you know, and for political propaganda. There's just all these terrible, terrible aspects to AI. And that's something that runs, a theme that runs through Terminal Days. You know, absolutely no AI was used to make any single aspect of that record. And that's never going to change. Other things like wealth inequality. You know, we live in this world where a handful of billionaires wield a ridiculous amount of political power, and yet there are all these people who go hungry, who are homeless, who don't have medical coverage. You know, these sort of fucked up situations that it sometimes feels like we're powerless to do anything about, you know? So that's something that drives the content of this album. You know, the con men and the grifters and just the fucking opportunists who are in politics. You know, all these things are part of what makes up Terminal Days. Yeah. So musically, I am pretty much self-taught, you know, and I'm not a super experienced guitar player, you know what I mean? I can't play piano, but thanks to the wonders of MIDI, I can do a lot with synthesizers, and I can program synthesizers. I know how to do that. I'm comfortable in that world. Guitars, you know, power chords, baby, power chords. You know, I know how to play guitar, but I'm certainly, I don't have this kind of like strong technical background. It's really self-taught. But it serves me well, and I'm a very big fan of collaboration. So on Mindwipe, I wanted a guitar solo. I did try and play once, and it was just terrible. It was so bad. Badly written, badly performed, and I was like, I know my limitations. So I called up my friend, Steve Weiner, who is the core of a avant-garde black metal band called Am I in Trouble? And he's also one half of the creative team on another black metal band called Reveal. And he is in a post-hardcore, post-metal, not sure how to exactly describe it, super awesome aggressive band called Negative Bliss. And I was like, well, hey, if he's in a band with negative in it, that's gotta be a good thing. And I called him up, I was like, do you want to write a solo for this? Like, I don't want to give you too many guidelines, just make something cool as fuck. And yeah, let's see. So he came back with the solo on Mind Wipe, and it's freaking awesome. And on the song Pain Control, I was like, I really think this song needs an electric bass. Like, the synth basses and stuff I was programming just wasn't working. It wasn't giving the song the kind of energy that I was looking for. So I called up my friend Greg Schwann, who's in a band called Witnesses. Also, just this awesome metal band, and really kind of atmospheric and sort of cinematic in its scope, and just really good. And I was like, hey man, do you want to play bass on this? Do you want to just kind of come up with a bass part? And even if it's something simple that kind of just follows the chord progression or whatever, but just you play it, you know, and bring something to it. So I know my limitations, and I'm totally comfortable reaching out to people to collaborate and find ways to make these songs as good as we can make them. So my creative background is a little more expansive than that. Let me just one other thing. My musical background, you know, like I said, I came up in the 90s industrial scene, and I had bands in the 90s and early 2000s. So I've always been in kind of industrial bands, a couple punk bands. So my musical background has always been kind of existing in this space and talking to other musicians in this space. You know, coming up in the 90s, there were just a whole bunch of us playing in New York, playing at all the local clubs and doing like shows outside of town. A few of us were touring, not me, but it was this great kind of incubator to have this opportunity to talk to other musicians about what they're doing and about what tricks they're discovering in terms of synths and building beats and, you know, creating stuff for the dance floor, creating stuff for shows, you know what I mean, when you want like a pit, you know, or whatever. So that all played a huge, huge role on me as a musician and really influenced my development as a musician. Creatively, things are a little bit more expansive than that. I'm actually a documentary filmmaker. I do that professionally. And you would think there is not a huge crossover between directing documentaries and writing angry political industrial music, but I've discovered there are kind of certain things that, because of the way my brain works, actually kind of flow between the two. I became a documentary maker after being a journalist, like kind of a straight journalist, for many, many, many years. I was a music journalist, I was a news journalist. I've kind of covered a broad range of stuff. And at the core of all that, at least the ideal of that, is you're telling people things that will help them navigate this world, right? And I know journalism can be pretty fucked up these days. You know, there are a lot of news outlets that have corrupted the ideals of what journalism should be. But this kind of journalistic ideal is still something I believe in and is still something that's important to me. It's why I got into that world in the first place many, 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 many years ago. And I think with Negative Agent and with the song with the album Terminal Days, there's some of that still at play. This idea that I'm talking about things in my own weird, fucked up way with the hope that, you know, it's not going to teach people anything they don't already know. Obviously, it's a song. It's not an article. It's not an investigative journalism piece. But I still feel like there has to be an honesty there, and there still has to be this idea that it's an attempt to put something in the world that can maybe help people, you know? And maybe it just helps people because it's just an outlet for their own aggression, you know what I mean? Or just gives them an opportunity to dance. I get it. This is music. This is not life or death, and it's not, you know, saving people's lives, brain surgery or anything like that. But I don't know. I feel like there's this idealism to my journalism that is in my music. Maybe that's what it is, this idealism. And it's not something I'm overly conscious of, but it's probably there. You know, it's why I got into journalism, why I got into documentary making. So that doesn't just get turned off when I do other things and other artistic endeavors. You know what I mean? So it's all just part of it. So there are a couple collaborators. On Terminal Days that I'm really, really happy agreed to be part of it. Steve Weiner, who's in the band Am I in Trouble and Negative Bliss and Evil, they're all these super aggressive but also kind of avant-garde outlets. Just these amazing bands. And he's just a great guitarist, and when I recognized that I wanted to put a guitar solo on the song Mind Wipe, and when I realized I suck at guitar solos, I reached out to Steve to see if he would play. And yeah, it was better than I possibly could have imagined. And it went in directions that I never could have imagined, which I think is really cool and really important. You know what I mean? Like you have this idea in your head of how a song should be because you're the musician, you're the songwriter, and other people come in, and especially if you're not like looking over their shoulder, you know, if you're letting them do their thing, which is the whole reason you're collaborating with them in the first place, right? So they're gonna come in with something that represents how they interpret the music and how they interpret the themes, and brings their own backgrounds and their own experiences and their own kind of influences and all the things that makes them them. They're gonna bring that to your music, and it's gonna go in a direction you did not predict. And it's awesome, right? Like the solo he played, I love. And the first time I heard it, I was like, wow, that's not at all what I'm thinking. But I think it's really cool, right? Is this cool? Am I happy with this? I played it a second time, I'm like, yeah, this is it. This is what the song is now, I guess. You know, and I love that. On the song Pain Control, I wanted bass. I wanted a bass guitar. I didn't want synth bass because the synth bass that I was coming up with just didn't work. It didn't have the power, it didn't have the energy that I wanted that song to have. And I don't know how to really play bass. I don't even own a bass. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna call up my friend Greg Schwann, who is in has a band called Witnesses, and they're also awesome and super heavy. And I was like, dude, can you play bass on this? And like, just come up with something, like find a tone that you think works, find an approach that you think works. If you want to just follow the chord progression, the power chords, that's cool too. But just, you know, find a way to put yourself into it. And what he came back with was like way cooler than I would have thought of. And it added so much to the song that like an energy level that I didn't really expect, even though I expected it to add something. So collaborations in that sense become super, super important, and I really enjoy them. I want to do more of them. So one collaboration that is part of the record is with my friend Hillary Johnson, my mastering engineer. And I've known her for a really, really, really long time. And she runs a studio called Kale Shelter Studios. And she's also been a DJ in the goth, industrial, post-punk, new wave scene for a long, long time, which is how I met her. And I knew that she would understand what I was trying to do musically. But the cool thing is, she's a great engineer. You know, she mastered this, but she's also a great mix engineer and producer. So I was able to give her my mixes, and she was able to give me feedback she didn't just take them and master them best she could, you know, based on whatever shitty mix I gave her. She really gave me feedback on stuff that could make the mix better, that I could do to make the mix stronger, to give her more to work with, to bring things out more. And it was just such a huge, huge help for getting the record to sound the way I wanted it to sound, right? You know, I'm a self-taught engineer, you know, a lot of asking friends, reading a lot of books back in the day, a lot of magazines. But mostly it's kind of figuring it out as I go along. And here's someone with professional experience who's willing to talk to me about things that, I mean, I consider that a collaborative effort. And just her mastering it and what she brought out on the record, I consider to be a collaboration. You know, you're not just handing your stuff off to a mastering engineer and saying, do this, give me back something cool. You're working with them. You know, we had 3 rounds of back and forth on every song because, you know, she can't read my mind, even though she kind of knows what I'm after. And I don't always know what to tell her. So there was this conversation that we were having that I think led to something just really good, better than I could have thought of. And that was really, really cool, really exciting. So yeah, Hillary, Steve, and Greg. The last collaboration is with my friend Brooks, who's probably better known as VoidScan, who is an IDM, techno, industrial, electronic musician. And he remixed Fascist Beatdown and turned it into this like slamming dance floor song. Like just these huge beats, you know, and all this bass and all these kind of cool techno elements and stuff that was just awesome. You know, back in the day, all these industrial bands that I admired, you'd buy the record and there'd be like 1 or 2 remixes on it, right? And from other bands. Sometimes they do their own remixes, but sometimes it'd be remixes from other bands. And I really wanted that to be part of Terminal Days, and I really wanted Brooks, VoidScan, to do this initial remix because I really love his music. He's really good at what he does. He's an awesome dude. And it just seemed like the perfect kind of coming together of musical tastes and interests. So a different type of collaboration. I mean, I just gave him all my music, all the tracks and all the stems, and I was like, do something cool, like do your thing. And I'm not gonna give you notes or feedback. This is your remix, like fuck my shit up, you know what I mean? And he did in like the best way. I totally love it. He did a few things that I wish I had thought of, and that pisses me off. Like, you know, starting the song with the chorus, I was like, really? It sounds so good. Why didn't I think of that? Pineapple on pizza. I mean, I ought to end this right now just for even having to answer that question. I'm from New York, right? Like we have, I mean, maybe outside of Italy, fine. But I think we have the best pizza in the world. New Jersey's got good pizza. Parts of Connecticut, believe it or not, have amazing pizza. Up near New Haven, pizza is awesome. Chicago has a casserole that they call a pizza, which is really good, but it's kind of its own thing. Sorry, all my friends who are in Chicago, don't hate me. So I've strong opinions about pizza, and one of them is that pineapple absolutely does not belong on it. I think pineapple on pizza is kind of gross. Yeah. But that said, and this is important, if you like pineapple on pizza, fucking put pineapple on pizza, right? You don't need some asshole telling you that pineapple on pizza is fucking wrong. So fucking you do you, man. Like pineapple on pizza. Hell yeah, for anyone except for me. Oh man. Pineapple. I think there are a lot of things that excite me about the music scene right now, and there are a few things that horrify me about the music scene right now. The stuff that I love is I just keep seeing all these local bands and smaller bands and indie bands putting music out because they're tools at their disposal that didn't exist 30 years ago. You know what I mean? Or even 20 years ago. That these tools that let them get their music to a wider audience. And I think that encourages them to be creative, and it helps them find people who are into their stuff. And those people become fans and they encourage the musicians, and the musicians then put out more stuff and the fans are still happy, and you get this great feedback loop of creativity. And that's really cool. I'm also really encouraged. I was seeing a band play, and they were playing an all ages show. And there are all these people there who are a lot younger than me. And I was really encouraged to see what they were doing. You know, they're still playing music that fucking pisses off your parents, that pisses off authority, that says something, that expresses something, that gives them an outlet. They're not just coasting. They weren't playing songs that they wrote with fucking AI, right? And the audiences were into it. They were supporting these bands. They were buying their merch. They were buying t-shirts. They were buying CDs. They were buying tapes. They were buying stickers. You know, they're signing up to get downloads. They're doing whatever they do to show their love for these bands. They're fucking it up in the pit, you know? It really makes me happy to see all that, because there was a time when I was worried that maybe it wasn't there. But yeah, they're still finding ways to connect in the real world. It's not just all online. So that, I think, is amazing. But there are some huge, huge problems in the music industry right now. Not the music industry, fuck the music industry, right? But in the scene. Streaming. You know, streaming on one hand is great because you can get your band and your music up on some of the streaming services and everyone can listen to it. And that's not a bad thing. But the streamers have destroyed the music industry. So yeah, bands can get their music out there, but they can't turn it into any sort of career. You know, it's so much harder to do that. And sometimes it doesn't matter. I'm not expecting Terminal Days to create such a huge audience that I have a career with Negative Agent. A, I like my job, so that's cool. B, it's industrial metal. That's not a genre of music that's gonna make anyone $1 million, right? But there are bands out there who are good enough where 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there was a pathway forward for them. They get their stuff out super indie. They sell tapes at shows, they sell CDs at shows, they do whatever they're doing, and their crowds grow. And then maybe they get picked up by a small label, and that small label is able to support them just a little bit, just enough for them to go on tour. And maybe they get on tour with some bigger bands. And maybe their audience grows and a bigger label comes along and says, well, listen, your contract with the smaller label is going to be up soon. We want to sign you for your next record. Or we want to do a licensing deal with your current label, or whatever. And these bands can progress. There were bands in the 90s and the early 2000s that were enormous that, you know, were coming out of nowhere. And we're extreme metal. We're doing all this stuff that you wouldn't think would have success on a mainstream level. But it did because there was a way, there was a path for these bands to move forward, to build their audience, and to not have to have, maybe they had day jobs, but they were day jobs that still afforded them a lot of time to work on their music and to perfect their art, to perfect their stage show. Now, I don't think that's possible, you know, except for some really lucky people. Really lucky. But you didn't necessarily need a ton of luck for that initial step forward back in the day. You just needed tenacity and a certain level of, if not quality, charisma, right? You just had to be able to get yourself out there and find your fans and make your music connect. And I think streaming has made that go away. The business model that streaming is built on, particularly Spotify, is atrocious. It's exploitive, right? It is, you don't get paid until you have 1,000 streams, and even then, you get paid dick. And with no labels there to support the band, well, how's the band supposed to accomplish that? You know, they have to work 100 times as hard, putting out their own TikTok videos and YouTube videos and Instagram stuff and all these things to pick up the slack because there's not enough industry there to support the network that was in place to help bands do this in the first place. And it's because streaming services are run like tech companies. And tech companies are not optimized to do what needs to be done in this situation. It's why they're such fans of fucking AI, right? And I'm not saying the music industry was great before that. It was also exploitive, and it was also spitting out shit deals for bands and musicians. I don't mean to paint a rosy picture of it, but somehow they found a way to make it worse, right? And that's because tech companies took over. It's the same thing that's happening in the movie industry with all the streamers. You have tech companies taking over instead of movie studios, where movie studios were motivated because they had to get asses in the seats. You had to put out a movie that was at least good enough to have an audience, to make some money and generate some word of mouth, to get more people into the theaters to see it. But with streaming, you don't have to do that. You can put out crap and it doesn't matter because you got the subscription money. Streaming music, you got the sort of the same problem. The streamers have you as an audience. They know you're gonna listen to it because it's convenient, it's easy, because you don't have to pay anything. And meanwhile, the streamers can sell your data or do whatever to make money, so they don't care if the music's good or not. They don't care if they promote the music or not. They don't care if your music butts up against some fucking AI-generated music. It doesn't matter to them because art is not the goal. They're tech companies. So that's something that I really think needs to change somehow, and I'm not sure how that is done. The other really big change is we need to get rid of AI. It's something I will always come back to as a core concept. AI music is it's terrible, and it's only gonna make things worse. And we have a chance to sort of prevent that dark, fucked up matrixy future, but we just gotta do it. You know, we can't give away our artistic selves to the AI companies, to the sort of lazy, cynical companies that think you can outsource creativity like that. So I'd say those are two things that really need to change in the music industry. But I'm heartened by so much of music and bands and everything else, the scene feels the same, and it just is still exploding. So, yeah. strange times we live in, right? I like that question. That's very nice. I'm just gonna let the siren go by. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a siren right outside my door. I think the cops found me. As we say in the movie industry, hold for siren. All right. So right now you can find Terminal Days and all Negative Agent music on Ampwall at negativeagent.ampwall.com. You can find all the stuff on Bandcamp at negativeagent.bandcamp.com. Negative Agent is up on Instagram. And I guess you can support us just by following us, spread the word, right? That's what bands really need. I mean, it's cool if you buy tapes, CDs, and downloads. That's awesome, and I'll always appreciate that. But I just want people, it's just cool if you spread the word. It's just cool if you if you dig the music, telling people that you dig the music, and telling people they can check it out. That kind of means the most to me. That kind of support really, really helps. So, yeah, Ampwall, Bandcamp, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Those are the 4 best places to find out about Negative Agent.